Hello, my amazing artists. Today we are going to be working on that self-portrait lesson. Now, last week you created a sketch of your self-portrait. Today we are going to be using this very realistic self-portrait and combining it with a symbolic self-portrait. Now, let's break down that word symbolic. A symbol is an image that is used to represent something. So if I drew this symbol right here, you all know what that is. It's a heart. That's the symbol. What does it mean? Usually love. If I drew this symbol right here, again, another very iconic symbol. Boom. What is it? A peace sign. You got it. It is used to represent peace. So a symbol is used to kind of represent a meaning or an abstract concept. We can't really draw a picture of peace, but we have this symbol that represents peace. So today, what you are going to be doing is creating a symbolic self-portrait. So you need to think of symbols that represent you. Going to be a little tricky. You might want to think about maybe a list on a piece of paper to start. You are going to need 5 different symbols. Whoopsie, so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to create a list 1 through 5 and start thinking about things that represent me. I am very adventurous. I love to travel. I like to be outdoors. So adventurous is definitely a symbol that is going to represent me. I'm also very creative. So I want to have some sort of symbol that represents creative. When you're thinking about these symbols that represent you, think about personality traits like creative, and also think about hobbies that you like to do. If you really like to ride horses, maybe you use that as like a hobby, and you could even write a symbol that represents you could be a horse, okay? Because it's so much of your being. Another symbol that represents me, I'm going to say, tough one. How about teaching? Spend a lot of my day talking to kids and interacting with them and helping them, and I think that is a big part of my day. I'm also going to pick a personality trait that I like to embody, which is being brave. So I have adventurous, creative, teaching, brave, and what's another thing that I want to symbolize about me? I'm gonna say kind. I'm gonna try to figure out a way to find a symbol that represents kind. Besides your little list, you might want to start thinking about some ideas of a symbol that could represent these words. If I was doing brave, maybe I'm drawing some mountains with a little flag on top. Maybe they'll be like a person with their hands up. Teaching, I'm going to go with a classic apple to represent teaching, but my apple is going to be being painted with a paintbrush. Creative, I think I'm going to go with some fun, kind of funky shapes in an interesting design. Maybe I'm drawing some kind of like whimsical design, maybe something like that. And adventurous, maybe I'm drawing maybe a camper. Maybe a camper is going to represent adventurous for me. These right here, they're just quick little sketches. They do not have to be beautiful. Like my camper right now is not that fantastic. Those were just getting out our ideas. Once you have your ideas, you're going to get a white piece of paper, a good white piece of paper from your art bag. I am holding it landscape and folding it hamburger style. So I am lining those edges up really nicely, and I'm going to start in the center and push out, start in the center, push out to get a nice little fold on this piece of paper. We are going to be creating what's called a diptych. A diptych is an artwork that has kind of 2 panels. So we just created those 2 panels right here. One is going to be our final copy self-portrait drawing, and one is going to be our symbolic self-portrait drawing. We are going to start on the symbolic self-portrait today on this side of the paper. When you start to draw these symbols for your symbolic self-portrait, you need to fill this space. A good artwork has a very well-balanced composition, meaning the objects kind of interact with each other and maybe some things overlap and you fill the space. If I was to do this and I drew my camper this small right here, he's got some wheels, I drew my mountains down here and my apple right here, this is not a very well-balanced composition. Things are way too small. So I'm going to erase those and I'm going to give it a better go. I want to create an interesting layout for these objects. I think I'm going to decide to start with these mountains here in the middle. I'm going to give them a little bit of snowy peaks. Again, I'm going to put that flag flying up here. All right. Maybe it's got a little pole. Coming from behind these, I'm going to start drawing those kind of fun, whimsical little symbols to represent that I am creative. Kind of filling up the space that I have here in an interesting way. Kind of varying the size of my shapes to make them a little bit more interesting. Maybe I would do the same thing down here, making some big circles, some tiny circles. Some of these shapes connect, some don't connect. I think that looks pretty good right there. So I've already have two of my symbols. I have brave and I have creative. Next, I need adventurous. This kind of really set the scene here to have adventurous down here at the bottom. Down here at the bottom is where I'm going to put my camper. I want a Class C camper, which is one of those campers that has like a little thing over top of a truck kind of front here. So I'm going to draw this camper. Again, notice how large I am drawing. I drew that camper pretty big because I knew I had a good bit of space down here that I needed to fill. It's going to have a door, maybe a long window here, maybe some kind of little boxes down here, headlights, taillights, maybe a little ladder on the back. So I have 3 of my symbols now. The last things I need to do is teaching and I need to do kindness. So I think maybe I am going to come up here and this apple might be floating in the sky a little bit, but that's okay. As long as it's kind of interacting with the other objects that we have here. And again, I kind of wanted to have a paintbrush painting this little apple to show that I'm an art teacher. So right now I just let that run off the edge of my paper, and that is perfectly fine. I'm going to continue maybe filling up the space up there with some of those shapes. The last thing I need to represent is kindness. I think for kindness, I'm just going to do some flowers, because if you were trying to like do a kind act, you might give somebody some flowers. So down here, I am going to just draw a few flowers down here to fill up some of this space that I have. Maybe I'll draw another one kind of running off the edge of this paper. Okay. I really love what I have going on here right now. I think I am going to fill up the rest of this, and then when you are finished, you need to color it with some colored pencils. You might have some background space that is not colored, but I want you to color all those objects that you created, or those 5 symbols, I guess we should call them, for your symbolic self-portrait. I'm going to work on coloring my symbols, and I'll check back in with you in just a bit. So I've kind of continued working on my little coloring that I am working on. I colored the mountains, I colored the flowers down here that represent kindness. I'm going to work on coloring this apple up here. A little tip I wanted to show you when you go to color with your colored pencils, sometimes it's fun if you create a harder outline and then you work on creating what's called a value scale. A value scale means you shade from a very dark version of one color and you gradually kind of adjust the pressure on your hand in order to create a very light version of this color. Like I just did here, coming from the outside of the apple and working my way in. That allows a very flat 2D shape, like that apple was, to have more of a 3D form, meaning it looks a little bit rounded, because what is darker looks a little bit pushed back, kind of further away from you, and what is lighter looks to be a little bit closer to you. So when you're coloring, maybe try to create some value in an object. In one of those flat forms that you drew, you could color the outsides a little bit darker and gradually get lighter. And gradually get lighter as you go towards the center, like I just did here in this apple. All right, I'm gonna work on finishing my paintbrush and my little designs and my camper van. I hope you have so much fun creating your symbols, those 5 symbols you want to represent your self, that symbolic self-portrait. And I hope you enjoy coloring all your symbols. Have fun creating. Here's my finished symbolic self-portrait. I hope you love it, and I can't wait to see yours on Google Classroom. Be sure to keep this paper, as this artwork is not finished yet. Eventually, we will put our self-portrait, this sketch, we will transfer it onto here using a little technique. So make sure you keep your symbolic self-portrait as well as your sketch of your self-portrait. We're gonna finish up this whole artwork. And again, have fun creating.